The Life Talk Show is about testimonies where you can listen to be inspired, encouraged, uplifted, and entertained. It's the life. Good morning. My name is Ashley Cotton. I'm the host for the Life Talk Show. And as you all know, for those who have been rocking with me, for those who have been watching me, and also for the newcomers, for the new tribe, I just want to introduce you and let you know that this platform that God has blessed me with, that God has given me, is about testimonies. And it's about people just sharing their journey, opening up their heart to us, and just allowing us to come in for these 45 minutes to just give God the honor, give God the glory, because that's who it's about. It's about what God has done for each and every one of us and what he's willing to do for you too, if you give him the chance just to allow him to come in and make you new and give you a testimony as well. And so I want to introduce my guest, Dr. Katrina Esau. I just want to share a little bit about her story, and then I'll turn it over to her so you can get to know her as well. So it started in the pit of her stomach, an uneasiness, a nagging pain. She couldn't put her finger on it at first. The way he left the house, swiftly saying goodbye. The faraway look in his eyes at the dinner table. And then in September of 2003, what seemed to be all of a sudden, wham, there it was, without ever seeing him in action. I knew it at my core, is what she says. I knew, nonetheless, I found out my husband was cheating on me. The isolating shame of infidelity leads to crippling self-righteous anger that fills every fiber of your body. The sensation of it can begin to feel rewarding or justified. But Dr. Katrina is here to tell you that it's not. It's just a byproduct. It's the pain related to beyond failed expectations, and it too will pass like all else in this life. Coping or tolerating the hurt and pain was not an option for Dr. Katrina. She had to seek a way back to loving life and having a gratitude, a journey, if you will. With God's guidance, she most certainly did. It was a long and arduous process, and it's ever going. But she can honestly say that her life now is infinitely better than it was even before she suffered the spirit of infidelity. And so right now, also, I want to say that she has a course of Whole. It's WHOLE, Wives Healing Openly, Leaving Him Exalted, Power by KE3 Worldwide Enterprises. And so I just want to welcome Dr. Katrina to the Life Talk Show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for having me. It is a pleasure to be here with you and to share my story and the journey of the pain of infidelity for its purpose. So as you stated in my bio, it started back in 2000. Actually, it was Labor Day weekend of 2003. And I went off to a conference in Orlando, a women's conference, went there and was fed richly. And so there was one workshop that I went to, and it was entitled What Every Woman Needs to Know About a Man. So I'm in there, I got my notes going, I'm ready, I'm gonna come home and I'm ready to do the work.
Right.
And, you know, we're driving home, I'm there with several girlfriends, so we're all in the car together, and we're driving home, and I get a phone call from my daughter. And she says, Mom, we stayed at so-and-so's house. And I'm like, who is that? And that's when it all came crumbling down. I'm like, oh my God. And I had to keep it together because I'm in the car with my girlfriends and I don't want them to know what's going on.
Right.
And so, of course, you know, it's like an hour and 15 minutes from Tampa to Orlando. So the whole time I'm hearing them and we're in the car together, but my mind is there. And so I get home and I find out, of course, I ask, and, you know, most men, when you ask, they're going to say, no, I didn't. And they have this excuse or this story of who this person is. And so I knew my daughter wasn't lying. I knew she wasn't crazy. And, you know, you kind of know it. And I had known, I think, in the back of my mind prior to this, because you have the signs, you have the red flags, but we overlook it sometimes as women. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have any hardcore proof. You know, he was coming, he came home every night, you know, his paycheck came home. So, and, you know, he gave me what I wanted. So I did not necessarily pursue it, but I just knew something. And so when it all happened and came out, I was livid.
I'm sure.
Livid.
How long were you married?
We were married at the time. This was in 2003, and we got married in 95. So we had been married 8 years.
Okay.
And so, and it was just like, and we had been together since 94. He's my high school sweetheart. So we had been together, you know, for like 9 years at this time. My daughter, excuse me, my daughter was only 6 years old. No, she was 7. My daughter was 7 when it happened. So that thing just, it shook me. It rocked my world, because I was a person that I had always said, you know, cheating is a deal breaker. I'm not going to deal with that. I shouldn't have to deal with that. You know, I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to allow you to mistreat me in that way.
Right.
But excuse me, when you have a relationship with the Lord and you surrender yourself to God, it doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go. And so I came home. I didn't consult with God. I didn't consult with anybody. Number one, I'm too ashamed, too embarrassed to even tell anybody. I put him out. I didn't even ask him to leave. I told him to leave. I packed up his stuff. You have to go.
Yeah. So there was no communication between you two to say, okay, what happened? Where did we drop the ball, or I or you drop the ball? There was nothing. It was just straight flesh. And it's like, as soon as I get home, get out.
That's it. It was no conversation. There was nothing to talk about. Yeah. There was nothing to talk about. You know, I didn't want to talk. There's nothing you could have told me, you know, because in my mind, I did all the right things. Now, granted, I know it wasn't perfect. You know, we had our differences, but I was there for you. I was a hardworking person. I'm a beautiful Black woman. You know, I had it together. I stood by you. I'm here for you. There was nothing you could have said to me. So I didn't want to have a conversation, because number one, I know you're going to lie. You lied initially when I asked you about it, you know? And so there was really nothing that he could have said or done at that time. And, you know, I look back hindsight and I'm like, well, would I have done it differently? And part of me would say yes, but then on the other side, like, I don't know that we could have worked through and got to where we are today had he still been in the house. You know, I just don't know that I could have done that.
So once he's out of the house and he leaves, now you're alone with yourself, with you and God. So at that point, what begins to happen? Like, did the healing process start, or did God begin to reveal things to you that you didn't think, you know, was?
So both, actually. So when he's out, number one, I'm thinking God is going to be on my side, you know, and that's why I talk about the self-righteousness, you know, because I'm like, wait a minute, God, I'm a tither, I'm a giver, I'm in the church every time the door is open, and then you allow him to do this to me. And God began to show me me. He was like, yeah, you know, you're in the church, but you come home fussing, you doing that. He started showing me what I was doing. He started showing me what I was bringing, you know, to the relationship, and how I wasn't being a loving wife, and how I was, no matter what he did or how he did it, I always was nagging and had something negative to say. And so I'm like, wait a minute now, you need to be dealing with him. He's the one that's out there and cheated on me. I don't need this kind of talk from you.
Right.
And so, but God, that's the one thing about him, is we don't have power to change other people. So God began to show me. I don't care when I brought up my husband or what he did, what he didn't do. He always pointed back to me and would show me my frailties. He showed me my faults. And so I began, you know, to walk that journey and to really reflect. Now, it took a minute for me to actually start moving, because when I tell you, it was like somebody knocked the wind out of me. That thing hurt like nobody's business. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move forward. All I knew was get out, and I want a divorce. That's all I knew in my mind. I couldn't even think about how we're going to work through it. I couldn't. And I'll never forget it. I was at work in a conference room, and I called my spiritual mother, and I told her what happened. And I told her, I was like, I'm getting a divorce. And she was like, wait a minute, baby. She was like, the Lord don't move that fast. Like, mother, what you mean he don't move that fast?
She said, now, wait a minute now, back up now, because that's you moving fast.
exactly. She's like, that is not God, honey. He don't move like that. And so I'm like, I don't believe she is saying this to me right now. And the one thing that she said that pierced me, she was like, even when you sign the divorce paper, she's like, your heart ain't gonna change. You're still gonna love him. You're still gonna feel the way that you do. So she's like, you got to take a step back and let God do the work. I did not want to hear that.
I'm sure.
I'm just gonna be honest. I did not want to hear that. And so now I'm like, ain't nobody on my side. You know, I have, God is telling me about me. I'm talking to my spiritual mother and she's pointing me back to God. And it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. And so that process, the journey, it started from there. And it was a long process. And so even when I didn't, like I said, we never had a point where okay, let's talk about what went wrong. And so even when I said, okay, if you're telling me, my spiritual mother, if you're telling me that, God don't move this quick and, I need to allow God and God is showing me, okay, maybe I won't get the divorce. We'll, work it out or whatever. But at that time, my husband didn't even want to work it out. He didn't want a divorce because he didn't want to pay for it. But at the same token, he wasn't ready to admit his wrong. He wasn't ready to confess what he did. And he wasn't ready to stop doing what he was doing. He was more mad and angry that he had been caught. So there was no repentance at all. And so I remember asking God, like, because we always hear it takes two to make it work. It takes two. It takes two. And actually, that was one of the first, and I still have it to this day. It's a cassette. Somebody probably don't know what a cassette tape is, but I brought a cassette series from Dr. Creflo Dollar, and it was It Takes Two. And so I began to tell God, I'm like, he doesn't even want this. Like, why do I have to fight? Why do I have to stay? And God told me, he was like, me and you are the two. You have to agree with what I'm saying. You have to agree with my word until he can, do what he needs to do. And I'm like, oh my God. And so that made me change my mentality and my thinking, because I was one, we all say it. Like, if the two of you don't want to work together, it's not going to work. And then I began to hear other messages. Then I heard, Bishop Jakes was teaching, and he was sharing how when couples come to him for marital counseling, and he was saying, all I need is one of y'all to want it. I don't need both of you, but he was like, one of you have hope, then I have something to work with. But if you both come in here and you're just looking for me to validate you getting a divorce or separating, I can't help you. And so once again, it was the one. All he needed was the one. And so I had to be the one.
And you know what's interesting? Because I keep hearing the one, even when we were talking off camera, that God will leave the 99 to go after the one. He only needs one person to do his will, to do his purpose. And then he will, orchestrate the rest if we are willing to surrender to him, to allow him. And one of the things too, as you were talking that, he was saying, no, you have to, because you have me and you together in this, even though your husband is going through his process, going through his thing. And then it's so funny because now you all are still married, and I'm pretty sure your marriage is much better than what it was. But then you become a three chord because you have your husband, you, and God and Jesus. And that's the three chord that can't be easily broken, that can't be easily apart. So I want to highlight the fact that, you had to do the work within your heart of things that, you grew up with, because it's not so much about your marriage, but it's just you overall as a person that he wants to deal with to make us whole, to make you whole. And sometimes we do have to look within ourselves because we're so busy out here looking at everybody and pointing a finger that we have to take a beat and look within our own heart. And when he's dealing with us, it doesn't feel good because of self-righteous, because of pride. If I'm gonna have a transparent moment, this whole entire week has been healing for me because of, my spiritual mentors that I have in my life. And there was a lot of things that I had to reveal about myself that I wasn't ready to face. And I thought that I was okay because I've been walking with the Lord for 17 years, in a relationship with him. And I couldn't believe it. And I was just yesterday or this morning, I was in my car worshiping and praising. I said, God, I didn't realize how jacked up I was. because I thought since I was in you that everything was okay. And it was like, no, because you have to go in and do the work. You have to go in and heal some things with your heart. You have to heal from my son's father, our relationship. You have to heal from that. You also have to know you're worthy to be loved. And he was just showing me some things about myself that I give and I give and I give and I give, but it's hard for me to receive. And that was the part, because everything I do it unto the Lord. Everything I do it to God. And it's like, I give you, I give, I give. And he was like, he brought me back to Matthew 22 that says about the wedding, you know, the banquet, you know, preparing a table. And he was like, I have this table for you that I really want you to have, that I really want you to prepare for you, but you got to be in a position to receive it. And so I've been crying this whole week, because when you're healing in the process, yeah, it is like, oh, I didn't know. Yes. I had no clue.
Yes. And that is so powerful what you said, because it reminds me early on, you know, when my husband and I were going through, one of the things that God would tell me, he kept pointing me back to the scripture. And he would say, I can't pour new wine in old wineskin. And so, yes. And so every time I would tell him, well, God this, God that. And he's like, no, I got to clean you up. And one of the things that he showed me, which is why I say that forgiveness is the foundation. It's the foundation. If we don't start there and get it right there, everything else is jacked. And so he began to show me that you need to forgive your father. And I'm like, forgive my father for what? He didn't do anything. Like, I'm a daddy's girl. I love my daddy. What am I forgiving him for? And he began to show me that because my father left, my father and my mother divorced because my father cheated. So we're dealing with a generational curse, because my father and my mother divorced, my grandparents divorced, my great-grandparents divorced. So there's no model for me, right?
Right.
And so he shows me, you got to forgive him for leaving. And I'm like, I thought I had moved on from that. But all my life, I have been an overachiever. And it was because I always wanted to prove to my father that I did it without you being there. So when I got my undergrad degree, when I got my master's degree, when I went back for my doctorate, I never had a plan. I never had a plan. Well, I need to get this education so I can make more money. It was always about, I'm proving to my father that I did it without you being in our lives. And so that was in my subconscious. And God began to show me that that's why you don't trust me in certain areas, is because you didn't trust your father. When your father left at 2, it opened the door for insecurity, for rejection, for your inability to trust. That door opened. So I need you to go back and forgive him. And that thing hit me, because when I tell you I love my daddy like nobody's business, and I was like, wow. So I called my father and I told him, I was like, Dad, I forgive you, for not being there for us and for leaving us. And I did not know that my dad was walking around with unforgiveness toward himself. And he was like, he thanked me for forgiving him, but he was like, baby, I can't forgive myself because I wasn't there. And I was like, Daddy, that was over 30 something years ago. Let it go. Like, it happened. Like, we love you. I'm a better woman because of it. Would I have wanted my dad in my life? You daggone right. Could things be different if he was in my life? Absolutely.
Yes.
But I'm like, Daddy, I'm a grown lady now. I'm a grown woman. I'm established. Like, let it go. We can't undo what we've done.
Right.
All we can do is build from here. And my dad and I had we start rebuilding my relationship in my senior year. So we had already rebuilt and was building in the relationship. I felt like it took it to another level when I forgave him. And so that's the importance of, having a relationship with God and just being sensitive to being obedient, because here I am all these years, doing and acting certain ways, not realizing that I had a seed of unforgiveness towards someone that I thought, I know that I love, but I'm like, I never would have thought that I had unforgiveness. So it's important, as you say, and when we go through that healing, because we have to reflect. And a lot of times we don't like to take the time to reflect because it hurts.
Dr. Katrina, you are up here flowing and you are ministering, because as you're talking, I'm hearing people have to deal with, all of us have to deal with the stronghold of the mind, of the thoughts, and the strongholds of the heart matters, heart issues.
Oh,
and it's always when a seed is planted, when either Satan, the enemy, whoever, when a seed is planted, it takes root and it begins to germinate, and it creates a harvest. And the very fact that it's something that happened at 2 years old, that's why it's so important to deal with things at the root. As soon as the seed get planted, don't let it fester. And a lot of times we leave things dormant because we think, oh, I'm over it, or I don't think about it. And so, it's done with, but it's not, because it's planted and it's still growing and it's still creating a harvest. And the fact that, God chooses the one again to come in the bloodline to break the curse, to break the curse of alcoholism, to break the curse of being molestation, to break the curse of abuse, divorce, whatever it is. And the trust issue, I can relate. I can identify with the trust issues, which has hindered my relationship with the Father because of trust. Trust issues that I had, with my mother, subconsciously not thinking, because she wasn't there with me when I was molested at the age of 3. And so growing up with that and having that resentment, like, we're better now. We're in a good place, in a good space now, because I had to heal and I had to really go through the process of that healing. But I mean, it's so many, different dynamics to this, that I hope that people are taking heed to it. I hope that people are, really listening and willing to look within themselves and begin to do the work. There's no way around it. And God will bring you right on back to the very beginning of your life, whether it's at the age of 2, 3, teenage years, whatever damage, because we're damaged goods. We're good, but we're of damage. And he wants to bring us to a place of wholeness, of being complete in him. So, Dr. Katrina, I want to ask you a question. When you went through the process of healing and God was revealing some things to you that happened, what was going on with your husband while he was over here? What was God doing within him?
So with what it looked like to me, it looked like nothing happening over there. I'm just gonna tell the truth and shame the devil. But he was the thing of it. So when I first started this, now let's mind you, God had told me to tell my husband he had 3 days to come home. So I thought we were gonna have a quick work, but them 3 days turned into 3 years. So my husband, he moved when I put him out, he went with this woman, but he ended up leaving and getting his own place. And so now he can do whatever he wants to do. So there was still some time. We were separated 3 years where I didn't feel like he was doing nothing, but I know that God was pushing him to a place. And I say that because in that 3-year period, my husband and I, we began, and people always like, you did what? We kind of started dating. And so he would share with me, like there was one time, and I'll never forget it. We were sitting in the car and we were listening to a song. And he was like, ever since you told me that God said to come home, he was like, I can't keep money. I can't. It's like holes in my pocket. I was like, in my mind, I want to say, I told you, but I didn't. I'm like, okay. But it was confirmation to me that God is doing what he needs to do. It don't look like it to me. It doesn't feel like it to me, but God is doing what he needs to do. Because see, at the time, my husband was a part owner in a strip joint, which I had no knowledge of. And so he had nothing but freedom and opportunity. And so he was like, when he told me about it, he was like, the girls were getting locked up and different things were happening. So he was constantly paying out money. So God was getting him to the end of his rope. So at the end of the 3 years where we were separated, when we started having the conversations about now reconciling, mind you now, at the end of this 3 years, he still had not admitted his wrong. He still had not truly confessed or anything. He's still living the life. But then all of a sudden, he was also hustling. He got arrested. And so now he has to go off to prison. So we have been separated 3 years. Now you're about to go to prison for another 3 years. And God was in all of this because he was looking at, my husband was looking at 30 years.
Ooh.
And he got off where he only had to do 3 years in prison. And so when he was in prison, now God has him all to himself.
Yes.
And so that's when God really began to work on not only him, but me, because now I don't have to worry about where you are. I don't have to worry about what you're doing. I know where you at, and ain't a whole lot going on in prison. And so now he could also focus on me and I could start doing my work. I had started during that 3 years, but I kept jumping off the bus because I was hurting and it didn't look like anything was changing. So I was still trying to get divorced. I tried to get a divorce 3 times during that 3-year period. And every time something kept happening and it would fall through. So I now am in a place to where God has my full attention. And it was during that time where I was watching TVN and I heard a couple share their story of how they had went through separation and then they came back and how their marriage was better. So this was my opportunity to say, okay, God, I know I keep asking you. He had been giving me dreams and showing me all this time that restoration was my story, but it did not look like it. And so I asked him at this point, I'm like, God, in your word, you said that the only reason that you give us the bill of divorcement is for cheating and infidelity, adultery. This has happened. Like, let us both go our separate ways. I know that you have a man that's going to love me the way I want to be loved. He's going to be my king. He's going to be this. Just let me go and heal and be ready for the man that you have for me. And he was like, Katrina, if you get a divorce, he was like, I'm still going to bless you. But if you don't stay and fight, your daughter's going to have to fight. And that's when it really hit for me. Man. Because I know that my daughter's going to fight some stuff. I know none of us are going to get through this life without trials and tribulations. But I did not want her to have to fight divorce because her mother was too weak to fight it. So that's when I made up in my mind that divorce no longer could be an answer. Divorce could no longer be an out. I don't care how tough it got. I don't care how hard it was. I don't care how much I hurt. I had to keep my hand to the plow. And so when he got that out of me, now he can keep digging. And he began to tell me, allow me to peel back the onion. And I didn't understand it then, but I do now. And we have to be careful because even then the enemy came in and he was like, what if you fight and your daughter still has to fight divorce? And I said to him, she may go through divorce. I don't know, but it won't be because her mother didn't fight. It will not be because of that. Amen. And so I don't care what anybody said. I was going to put my hand to the plow. And that's what I did. I stood in the gap. I prayed over my husband. I decreed and declared the word of God over him. I spoke over him what God said, no longer what I thought or what I felt about him or what he was doing, because we are not what we do. I want to make that clear to somebody. We're not what we do. That's so good. Even though my husband cheated, even though he was out there, doing whatever he thought he was big and bad enough to do, he is a mighty man of valor. He is the head and not the tail. He is the leader of this household. He's a strong man. He's mighty. He's courageous. He's handsome. I would decree and declare the word of God over my husband. I would decree and declare my breast and my breast alone satisfy him. You got to get in the book of Solomon and speak the word. Solomon is a love story all by itself. And so I began to do that. And I even began to pray for the women that he had cheated on me with. And people say, well, you prayed for them. Yes. I began to pray and speak blessings over them. Why did you do that, Dr. Katrina? Because the word of God says that you have to pray for those that spitefully use you and say all matters of evil against you. And the more I prayed for them, the less I hurt. So it was not about them. It was about me. And I began to pray for their children and for God to bless them and to cover them and to protect them. I had to pray and decree and declare. And that's what true forgiveness looks like. I didn't want to be hurt. I didn't want the pain. I prayed for years, God, just scar me. Like, I'll have the scar, I'll have the remembrance of it, but I don't want to hurt no more. I was hurting. I was bleeding. Yes. And so God said, you don't even have to have the scar. I'll remove the scar. And so
Ooh,
I'm like, okay, sign me up, Holy Ghost, remove it all. And so do I have memories? Are there things that I think about? Yes. But you know what? I don't hurt anymore. Like literally my husband and I, when we got the first copy of my book, he was the first one to start reading it. And we were sitting there laughing about the stuff and the journey. And it was like, oh my God, I remember one day, because he read it over like in a day. And so he was like, honey, he was like, I don't think I can do this, because the first 3 chapters are tight. I mean, the first chapter, I talk about me. I talk about, I cheated because I knew my husband was cheating. So I was trying to get back him. I'll tell any woman that's not the route to go. You're hurting nobody but yourself. You're 2 wrongs, don't make a right. So don't go that route. And then I talk about, what happened. And so for him to read it and to hear it from how it hurt me and what I was walking through, he was like, I don't think I can do this. I was like, honey, just keep reading. Just get to chapter 4, because that's what we talk about the rest of it.
You're going to finish this.
You can read this book. Yeah. And so it's just, that process of healing. Oh my God, it's a journey. And I tell women, because people be like, oh, it's been 10 months ago. Oh, it's been a year. Oh, it's been 2 years. It's been 3. I can't tell you how long your healing journey is going to take. But you have to be committed and just do the work. The one thing I can tell you is, if you have a relationship with God, if you surrender and submit to his will, if you say yes and you put your hand to the plow, take away the excuses, do the work, the pain will stop. I can't even tell you when it stopped. I don't remember when it stopped hurting. God would tell me, he was like, the more you share your story, the more I'll heal you. And I was upset at the time, because I'm like, you want me to what do you want me to tell him? He's still not home.
Dr. Katrina, I mean, I'm enjoying this conversation, and I hope those that are watching and will watch the replay too will enjoy this interview, because immediately what just came to my spirit, to my thought, is when you're pregnant and you have a baby, right? That baby is going to be so brand new, so beautiful, fresh and everything. But the process of carrying it, is weighing down on your hips, your back, everything is moving and expanding, and it's uncomfortable. But and then the water break, or you have to be induced in labor and all this stuff, and you're going through labor, and the labor pains, it's hurting. It's like, oh, when is this going to be over with? And you just going through the motions, and you just trying to just find peace of mind and just trying to get comfortable and just trying to focus. But once you push and you push and you push, even the process of that pushing, and when it comes out, God promised you that to women, that you won't remember the pain. It'll just go away. And now that you've birthed a new marriage to a new man, to a different man, because old things have passed away, behold, all things are new. God makes things new, that you don't even remember the pain. You can't even say when it was alleviated, because God did it. And God is no respecter of person. And what God will do for one, he will do another. Your process may be a little different. It's not going to be the same, because he's the creator. So he creates and do what he wants to do for him to get the glory. But it's like it ministers. And I hope that every woman that have went through divorce or contemplating divorce, even men too, trust God and surrender, just like you said, and give it over to him, and he will make that thing so brand new. I've known a lot of spouses who divorced their, husband or wife or whatever. And for that season they went through, but God brought them back together and told them, no, that is your husband. That is your wife. That's the one who you were supposed to be with. And they had to go back. But once they went through their process of whatever that is for them, he made it new. It's, fresh again. So I really appreciate and thank you for sharing the story. So I want people to know, where can they get your book? Like, give us all the information, your course, your classes, everything.
Yes. So they can get the book from my website. The book is The Pain of Infidelity, Birth's Purpose. And there's also an accompanying journal that goes with it that has like affirmations. It has different activities in there to help you walk through your process. They can get both of those at www.drkatrinaesau.com. They can also get the book and the journal. It's on Amazon as well as Kindle. And the other thing, the academy, the Whole Academy, and Whole is Wives healing openly, leaving him exalted. And I birthed this academy. It launches next month, and I'm so excited about it because I want to help other wives that are hurting, that are in their they might be in the process of, healing from infidelity. Maybe they've just gotten stuck, or maybe they thought they were healed, and they've heard something, and it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe I haven't forgiven. Because if you're still bringing it up, if you're still doing a run sheet, every time, it's not that's a sign that you're still bleeding, that you're still leaking. And so I wanted to create a safe place for wives to come, to be able to bear all and to get healed. Because the thing about cheating and infidelity is it's shameful. It's embarrassing. It's painful. You blame yourself. You have guilt. You have all these different things. So you're not going around telling everybody that, hey, my husband cheated on me. So you put on this mask in front of people, but you're suffering in silence. So I created the academy, and it's based off of the 5 pillars of the process that God took me through, which I believe are foundational to anybody that needs healing. If you need healing from any sort of emotional hurt or pain or distress, then you can benefit. And so it's the I Am Becoming Whole. It's a 12-month program, 1-year program, and it gives you access to, there's currently 6 different courses that are offered in it. It's forgiveness, it's time to heal, getting in vertical alignment, which is teaching you how to build a relationship with God. If you already have one, it's teaching you how to go deeper. And then there's self-care. It's time to love you, because we lose ourselves. We get lost in the shuffle along the way. It's going to teach you how to walk in the newness of life, how to see yourself as God sees you. And then it's going to teach you how to rebuild trust. So they'll have access to those different courses. They'll have an opportunity for 2 live group coaching sessions a month. They'll have access to what I call the hot seat opportunity. And that is so that they can ask questions specific to their situation, because the foundation is the same for all of us. We all got to forgive. We all got to rebuild the trust. We all got to take care of ourselves. So those things are foundational. But as you said earlier, the process I walk through and the process they have to walk through, it might be different. And so the hot seat gives them the opportunity to ask whatever questions they have specific to them, that they can get a coaching and assistance for. And then they have access to the community, which is built just for wives. It's only for wives that's been impacted by infidelity, so that you can get support from other women that are walking through the same thing you're walking through. When I walked through my process, it was just me and God, and I had my spiritual mother. I didn't have someone that I can be real, that I can be human with. My flesh side, my soul side, when I was hurting, I couldn't just pick up the phone and say, Ashley, I'm having a bad day. I didn't have that person. And so I always tell people, I knew what David meant when he said my tears became my meat, because I'd be home crying myself to sleep. I was, in a dark place because I didn't have an outlet. And so I created this community for wives that are hurting, to have an outlet to, number one, share what you want to share, and do it freely, and then get support and some help and some coaching along the way. So all of that is inclusive in the I Am Becoming Whole 12-month program. And then there's also the Academy launches next month on November 23rd. Yes, I know that that's the week of Thanksgiving, but the Academy is online. So you can be in Florida, Texas, you can be in Africa, you can be in Bali, Ghana, you can be anywhere across the globe. I'm not limiting myself to the US of A. There are women hurting from cheating and infidelity across the globe. So you'll have online access. You can, wherever you have Wi-Fi, you can take the course. And so we're going to launch next month. And then again, you're welcome. And you can get all of this information on the website, www.drkatrinaesau.com. I welcome you to join. And if you're at a place where you would say, I would love to do that, but I'm just not in that place financially, but I need help, I need support, I invite you to join my Facebook group. It's a private group. The only people that can see who's in it are those that are a part of the group. And so it is called Wives Healing Openly from Infidelity. You're more than welcome to submit a request to join, just so that you can get some support and start moving. I want, my heart's desire is that women heal. And I always say one conversation at a time, because you got to get from that place to where you're sitting in a dark room with all of the windows and the blinds closed and just crying yourself to sleep. You got to deal with the elephant in the room. You got to talk about it. You got to get healed from it so that you can live your best life. You know, I don't come from a place of, you know, trying to tell a person to stay or to leave, but I want to make sure that you as a woman, as a wife, that you get healed, that you get whole, that you live freely, and you no longer have to keep on a mask. You can take off the mask of shame and guilt and, you know, and blame and hurt. You can take that stuff off and live your life. There's purpose. There's purpose in each one of us. And I know you cannot see it now. I know you might be at a place where you're hurting so bad that you can't even see tomorrow. But I see you in your future and you look much better, because God's desire is that you become healed, that you become whole. He wants to heal you. He wants you to be set free. He wants you to be delivered. He loves marriage. He loves family. He gave his only begotten son that we would have the right to the tree of life, that he would have a family, that he gave his only kid. How many of you would give up your children for somebody else? He gave up his only child that we would be his family, the family of God.
Yes.
And he said that he came that we would have life and have life more abundantly, not just to be here existing. And when you've been hurt, the thing about cheating, it's like trauma. It is akin, research shows that it is akin to trauma. Like they study the signs and the behaviors of people that's been impacted by cheating and infidelity, and literally it shows up as signs of heart disease and cancers and things along those lines. So sometimes we have ailments in our body, and it's because there's unforgiveness. There's a root of bitterness. God wants you healed. He wants that thing uproot from the root of it, not dealing with the symptoms. We've dealt with symptoms far too long, far too long. So that is why the Whole Academy is created. I want to help women get healed from unforgiveness. That's a total, if I had to sum up what Whole was all about and what my mission is, it's totally about forgiveness and healing.
Yes,
forgiveness and healing.
Dr. Katrina, really quick, because also I want to ask you the fire rapid questions that I ask all my guests, and it's kind of like a fun icebreaker type of thing. But where are you right now, you and your husband, in your marriage, like right now?
Oh, the honey and the honeycomb. Can I just say that? Listen, God talks about the honeycomb, y'all, over there in Solomon, and that's where we are. He put the honey back in the honeycomb. You know, I not only love my husband, but I'm in love with my husband. He's always supported what I've done. But just the union that we have now, our ability to talk and to communicate, we didn't have that before. You know, we didn't know how to talk to each other. So we've learned how to communicate. We've learned, you know, to talk things over, not to go to bed angry. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. No marriage is perfect, but we are better than we were. And I thank God for his power of restoration and his power of healing. Only by God's grace are we still here. Amen. And we will be celebrating 25 years come Christmas Day. Yes, and I'm so excited.
On Christmas Day, okay? A gift of 25 years of just sticking it. Because when you look at older couples who've been married for 50 years and they celebrating 75 years, they have been through some stuff. They have been through some things, but God promised you that your ladder will be greater.
Yes, come on.
Your ladder will be greater, you know, and it's just a blessing. And thank you so much, Dr. Katrina, for just coming on and just sharing your testimony, because I just really believe that this is going to minister to so many people, even if you're single, because I'm single and I do desire to be married one day, but to just stick with it no matter what. And when I hear people's testimonies, whatever it may be, it really encourages me to keep going, that this platform, everything. And I get attacked and things go on behind the scenes that you just have no idea. But I keep going because God is good and he's sovereign and his grace is sufficient.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Dr. Katrina, let's get started with these fire rapid questions. Okay. Number one.
Okay.
What is your favorite verse in the Bible?
My favorite verse is, "It was good that I was afflicted, for it taught me the statutes of the Lord."
Wow. Number two, how do you get into the presence of the Lord?
Worship. I'm a worshiper at heart. I love worship music, and all the time. You don't need music. Open up your mouth and adore him. Call him who he is. And if you adore him, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nisi, El Makadish, El Shalom, Jehovah Shalom. Call him who he is, Adonai. When you begin to worship, when you begin to worship God, you can't worship him and he not show up. Oh my God, don't get me started.
Because he
Oh,
inhabits
Jesus.
the praises of
His people. Yes, come on here.
Number three, what do you think heaven is like?
Oh, glorious. Glorious. I can't even, as Samla Man said, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine the glory. All I see, the streets of gold. Like, oh, beautiful. Beautiful, peace, rest, and a big old praise party.
Amen. Hey, now, number four, who would you like to meet in heaven? It can be from the Old Testament, New Testament, or possibly a loved one that passed away.
Probably Paul. Me and Paul have to talk. Oh, Jesus. I would say I definitely want to see my loved ones, of course, but Paul, honey, him. And then I would also say Noah. You know, like what, how did you, people talking, saying crazy, you done built this daggone boat and they now drop a rain. How did you feel?
Yeah. And the last question, number five, given the opportunity in a small, quiet, intimate setting, and God manifests himself before you face to face, what would you say to him?
Oh, wow. Wow. What would I say to God? Oh my goodness. I'd be speechless. I don't even know that I could say anything, but most of all, just thank him. Thank him for keeping me and thank him for loving me, in the midst of it all, in the midst of my frailties. Every time I, gave up on him, quit on him, he still loved me. Yes. Jesus, he still loved me.
Yeah.
Still loved me.
And the fact that he has patience with us, so much patience with us, because I'm 38. And when I mentioned earlier in the segment that, I didn't realize so many things that I was holding on to in my heart, so many issues of my heart. And when he started to reveal them to me within this week and healing and, going through the process of forgiveness, because I'm reading this book called Set Yourself Free. It's by Robert Heiler. Heiler, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he's the apostle or the pastor of Glory of Zion International in Corinth. And he has this book, and God has been taking me through each chapter of reading it and going through the exercises because I'm telling you, I really want to be whole. Like not for nobody, but for myself and for God. So I can just be impactful and intentional and genuine and sincere with what I'm doing. Not to say that I have not in the past, but to really just go deeper. And he's calling me higher. You go from glory to glory to glory. And with that, it's a process in itself to get to that place, because you have to, peel back the layers, like, the onion that you mentioned. So, Dr. Katrina, this really ministered to me. Like I said, it's going to minister to so many people. And I just thank you for just taking the time out to even come onto this platform. I wish nothing but the best, just blessings over you and all that you're doing. I know that you're going to make a powerful impact with the women who come. And it's just a matter of God bringing the increase. So thank you for sharing, and God bless you. And I will talk to you soon. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed.